All right, looks like we are live. Hey, everybody. My name's AJ Morris, and I am the Product Innovation and Marketing Manager here at iThemes. It looks like even though we are live, we have about 3 minutes or so before it goes on the page. With me today is Michael Moore. He is our product lead for iThemes security, and he's going to be walking through security today. So, Michael, say hello.
Hey everyone, I'm super excited to be here today. We have some cool stuff that we're going to show you on how to secure your home and work environment. And we're going to talk a little bit about server security today. So I am real pumped up to share some things with you guys.
So as we kind of get things going, we'll start here in right at 1 o'clock. So we got about 3 minutes. But if you are not over on the getting started page, feel free to chat right there. Mike will be sharing his screen here once we get started and all of that kind of stuff. So we're looking forward to doing that. But in the meantime, let us know where you're from, where you're calling in from. I'd love to hear how things are going in your area today. So if you are new to iThemes, love to have you here. Love to let you know kind of how you found us and what brought you to learn about WordPress security. Hi, Bonnie from Colorado Springs. Good evening, BG from Germany. Glad to see a couple of people here. Hi, Doug from Toronto. Deb from Mesquite, Texas. Heather from Central Valley, California. Bob from San Diego. Thea from the Netherlands. Wow. So we are world renowned here today. Heather says she's been using Security Pro for a few years, so that's great to hear. Alrighty, well, it is 2 o'clock. So if you've ever been to an iThemes webinar before, we're going to do this one a little bit different, as you've noticed. Everything is all contained on a single page. We've got YouTube Live going. So the video replay will be up on our YouTube channel just as soon as we're done. And obviously you can follow along with the chat there on the page. So Michael, before we get started, why don't you talk us through kind of what we're going to be focusing on today and get us all kind of on the same page.
Okay, so what we are going to focus on today is we are going to start off with some tips on how you can secure your at-home work environment. Specifically, we're going to give you tips on how to detect phishing. So right now we are in the middle of the pandemic, and scammers are known to take advantage of crisis. So with the increase of text messages and emails and everything COVID related, Cloudflare has seen a huge increase in phishing attempts. So we're going to talk about how to identify those. We're going to show some examples and some practical ways that you can verify the sender of the email is who they say they are. And then we're going to move on a little, and then we're going to talk about how to communicate or how to secure your communication or your internet traffic. How do you make sure what you're doing on your computer stays private and stays between you and the person you're wanting to connect with? We're going to talk about some tools you can use to actually block at your access to websites with no malware and are known for distributing phishing attacks. And then we are also going to talk a little bit about server security, which is really the first step into creating a secure strategy for your WordPress site.
Awesome. Well, that sounds like a lot for us to cover today. We will be taking about a 5-minute break, kind of in between these 2 hours here, so we can kind of get up, stretch our feet, all that good stuff. If you have questions as Michael's kind of going through things, let's go ahead and just put in all caps question, and then your question inside of that chat. That way we're able to see it. We'll try to mark it down and be able to bring it back in and answer that question as Michael's going through it. So with that, I think we've got all the housekeeping items taken care of. Michael, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to you.
All right. So the first thing I want to talk about, and there is a handout that you can kind of follow along with the webinar, and then that's just kind of a reference. We're going to be doing a lot more demos today than I have done in the past. I'm really excited about that. But first things first, let's talk about working from home. As you can see, normally I'm not working from home. Normally I'd be at the office and running this webinar. So all of us had to adapt. And then now that we're home, we no longer have the protection of the protection that our office IT have been put in place. So the onus is on us to make sure that we are creating a secure working environment, and we are giving the same kind of thought about protecting that private and sensitive information that our work has entrusted us with. So the first thing I really want to talk about is just the different devices that we use. It's important to keep those up to date. And the reason why it's so important to keep those up to date is that 60% of hacks are happen. 60% of the attacks involve vulnerabilities which there's already been a patch applied for. So a good example of this is the Equifax breach. Here, let me share my screen real quick. Okay. So the Equifax breach. This is an example of a hack that was exploited after a patch had already been released. So several months after Apache released a fix for this vulnerability, they didn't update, and that is what caused a huge Equifax breach that breached millions of different people's credit information. And so unfortunately, that's not uncommon. Again, 60% of all attacks are using exploits of things that have already been patched. So it's important to keep in mind that updates aren't just for critical security or for bug fixes or cool new features. They also include critical security patches to protect your devices that you're on. So as we're working at home, a lot of our work has switched to new devices. So I just want to talk a little bit quickly about the kind of things, how do you update your different devices? So first thing first, on any device, the number one most critical thing you need to keep up to date is your operating system. And the reason why you want to keep your operating system up to date is because it controls everything. So let's say you have a printer job. It's going to handle that. It's going to handle running your browsers. Every single application is going to require the different protocols that your operating system has to offer. So if there's a weak point in there, attackers can use multiple different vectors to exploit your device. So let's take a look at an example of a operating system vulnerability that was pretty rampant. So the WannaCry vulnerability was a vulnerability in Microsoft that attackers use to take over people's computer systems, their personal computers, and then they used it for ransomware. So what they would do, they would take control, they would encrypt the database or encrypt all the files on there, and the only people who would have the key are the attackers themselves. And so, you turn on your computer and all of a sudden you would see something like this. It's like, uh-oh, all your files are encrypted. You have to pay us money in order to unlock it. And Microsoft, when this came out, to their credit, they sent out a patch to fix it, but some people are very slow to update. Larger corporations and government offices will often choose stability over pushing out the latest security fixes. And all these different hospitals and schools and government entities all this could have been prevented if they were just updating their operating system. It's not a difficult thing to do, but unfortunately, it is something that people tend not to do. And now I'm not going to go over each little thing, but in that handout, you are going to find instructions on how to automatically update every different type of operating system you have. So whether it's your mobile device or your desktop computer, you're going to see individual instructions in there how to automate those updates. Because if you're like me, it's really, really easy when you have a lot of stuff on your plate to let some things drop the ball. Unfortunately, like no one is requiring or pushing you to update. So what you can do is just automate it so it's out of sight, out of mind. So you get those latest security patches. All right. And then, another thing beyond your operating system, the next level of defense that you can do to help secure yourself while you're working at home is to make sure that you're updating your applications. Now, if you are downloading software from your operating systems app store, it's really, really easy to go ahead and configure it to auto update. But if you are downloading applications outside of the app store, you're going to have to make sure that either you configure within the individual application itself to auto update, or you can go ahead and manually update it as needed. So like FileZilla is an example of an application that I use often, that when I open it up, it will prompt me to update when there's an update available. A lot of us are using Zoom now, and that's an example of something that prompts you to update once you open it. So again, if you are installing software from the application store, the app store, you can configure that to automatically update, no issue. If you're installing applications outside of the app store, you're going to either have to set those to manually update or to automatically update, or you can manually update them as needed.
Hey, Michael, I want to stop right there.
Yeah.
So you're telling me that my system's not secure if I'm not running either software updates, like you just mentioned, or even operating system updates?
That's dependent. Like typically you want to keep everything up to date. Not every single update is going to include a security patch. Most operating system updates do have security fixes in them. So if you aren't running the latest version of your operating system, you likely have security vulnerabilities and that can be exploited by attackers.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And there's a couple things that we don't think about updating when we are working from home. One of them being, sorry, I'm trying to find my link, is your router. So you don't think about updating your router very often. And then unfortunately for the United States Air Force, they did not think about updating their router either. Someone brought a Nighthawk router into a United States Air Force base, and that had a vulnerability on it. And so hold on one second. I'm sorry. I thought I had this article up, but I did not. Okay, so a dumb security flaw allowed a hacker to download U.S. drone tickets. And there's a two-pronged, excuse me, part of this story. So this vulnerability in this router allowed people to FTP in using the file transport protocol to exploit it. And then they were able to go in there and then grab the secret classified drone blueprints that they then went to sell on the dark web. And so there's two things that they could have done to make this easily preventable. One, they could update, because again, 60% of all vulnerability or all successful attacks are vulnerabilities that have been previously patched being exploited. So this router could have had a simple update, and then these top secret information wouldn't have been able for anyone to buy on the dark web. Or another thing that you should be doing is updating your default usernames and passwords. Had they done that, because the password on it was admin and the password was password, so all they had to do was use an FTP protocol, scour the internet, looking for devices that are still using that version of that router's firmware, along with using the default password, which there's automated tools that people use to go and look for devices with these types of vulnerabilities. And so they could have just either updated or used better passwords than the default. And so here is an example of a website that literally you can go in and look at the different routers logins and find the default username and passwords to go in and take control of people's router and access their networks. So if you aren't updating your username and password when you get it, you are leaving yourself vulnerable to attack, because everyone has access to it. If you're not updating those passwords, you're making it easy for people who are using the tools specifically designed to look for routers and other devices that are using default username and password. And like one thing that it is an application that but I did want to point out specifically when it comes to updating is your web browser. As more of our stuff moves to the cloud, moves online, the web browser has never it's never played a bigger role. So it's an operating system within an operating system. So it's super important that you are making sure that you're applying the latest security updates on your browser. So, you'll be prompted most of the time. Chrome by default is set to auto update, or at least auto download the update, but install it'll prompt you to restart your browser session to install the update for you. But we do everything goes through our browser, and not applying those patches gives these attackers an easy blueprint to take control of not just your site, but they can maybe scrape all the information that you are sending between you and your boss, or you and a client. And the last thing you want is to have a vulnerability that allows them to play man in the middle and then get a bunch of information that your client has given you, whether it be payment or their credentials to troubleshoot some kind of software or technical difficulties that they're having. So again, I stress this so much because there's been so many times from my time in support where I am working with people, trying to help them, point them in the right direction to clean their site, or to follow best security practices, and they come in and they're upset because their site is hacked, and come to find out it's because they had outdated software on their site, which costs them not only their time, but their money and everything else. And so I talked more about updating than anything else, because the majority of attacks could be completely prevented just by updating. There's no excuse not to update. It's the most important thing you can do. And, as we're talking about your in-home network, now that we are filling our homes with more IoT or Internet of Thing devices, that's just another thing that you need to make sure that is staying up to date. And to make sure that you're using strong passwords on there. We all, I know it was really impactful for me, this story, but Amazon, their indoor cameras, their Ring cameras, where these hackers are able to brute force their way into these IoT inside camera devices, see what was going inside these people's homes. There was a video of that little girl who walks into her room. She's singing, she's happy, and some creep on the internet was able to use to brute force their Amazon account, and then peer in on the daughter and say some creepy things and scare her in her own home and out of her own room. And that is because they weren't using proper security measures such as strong passwords or two-factor authentication to prevent that kind of thing from happening. So again, it has never been more important. Attacks are up. These con artists, these scammers know that there's more of us working from home, that the majority of us don't know how to properly secure our sites. We're not following the best security practices. So it has never been more important to make sure that you are following proper password hygienes, which we'll talk more about tomorrow. Talk about two-factor authentication. Again, that's another topic that we're going to cover at great length tomorrow, to make sure that these attackers you're not making it easy on these attackers. There's so many simple things that we can do to protect ourselves from these common attacks. And that's the great news for all of us, is that the majority of these attacks can be prevented with very little effort by us. That's a common theme if you ever talk to me about security, is that there's so many things that we can do to stop pretty much 100% of attacks. So I think I belabored that point enough. So we can move on to the next thing. Let me pull back up my notes.
So I want to just recap here for a second, Michael. So you started covering operating system and apps or software, making sure that we're running them up to date ourselves, or we have auto updates enabled. We then touched on the router and how routers play an important role in the home to also help keep your network security secure. Talked a little bit about browsers and keeping those up to date, and then obviously the Internet of Things, these various devices that we bring into the home, whether it's security systems, security cameras, doorbell cameras, even like Fitbit watches and all of these other devices that still somehow connect to the internet. We want to make sure that they're all up to date. So I think I'm with you there. I think we have a couple of questions that relates to both of those, though, that I thought now would be a great time to talk about. So Norbert asks, on a phone, apps are installed but not used for, say, 6 months or more. Does the phone stay secure when they don't use the app anymore but keep it on the phone?
Yes, okay. So iOS, definitely yes. Android, there's a caveat, and the only caveat is apps that Android allows you to install apps outside of the App Store. So you can go to these third-party marketplaces and then easily install these apps on your device. And that brings up, I'm really glad you brought this up, because this brings up a really great point, actually. So with iOS and Android, the proprietary marketplaces, all of those apps are going to be automatically updated. There's instructions in that handout how to ensure that the automatic updates happen for both the operating system and the applications. Now, this plays another big part of all of security. Most of the time it's anytime your phone gets hacked. The majority of Android hacks, how those happen is by people installing software in third-party app stores. They're looking for a deal. They're trying to find something cheaper than it is in the actual marketplace, and they end up installing this malware or this APK. That's what they're called. That was what they called their software files. So they installed this third-party APK. And guess what? That APK has been modified, and it's been modified to have malware. I'm really glad you brought this up because I neglected to think about this. So it's all about securing or installing software only from trusted sources. If it sounds too good to be true, it's going to be too good to be true. And I used to be one of those guys, like, that I would have my Android phone, I would root it, I would do all this other cool stuff. I'd find these third-party marketplaces. And then truthfully, I don't do this anymore, but I would pirate games and I would save money because it was free and I installed it on my phone. And me personally, guess what? My cheapness and my thinking I'm getting by with one actually caused one of my phones to become hacked. And then actually the malware ended up breaking my phone, and my, I think, 2-month-old Samsung phone became completely useless because I was installing software from untrusted sources. And that goes the same in the WordPress space. There was a time that I had a customer come to us in iTheme security support, and then she found a really good deal on iTheme Security Pro, not from our store. And she didn't know any better. Like, she wasn't trying to get one. This was just someone who's like, okay, this seems like a really good deal. And so she downloads, installed it. The version of iTheme Security Pro she installed from the what she didn't know was from the black market, but it was the black market, had been modified to have malware in it. So she, wanting to secure her site, didn't verify that this third party was selling, had the rights to sell iTheme Security Pro, modified it. So not only could they take her money, they could then get her site infected with malware and then try to hijack people's browsers who visit her site. And so again, I'm super glad that Norbert, you brought up this point, because that we are the biggest vulnerabilities for all of our systems, all of software. The number one vulnerability is us. And it's all about taking that extra moment to pause and do your due diligence to make sure you're installing software from a trusted source. I hope that answered your question. That went on probably a little bit longer than you wanted to, but you got me passionate.
Yeah. Well, Norbert, if there's a follow-up, just feel free to comment. So Anna asked another interesting question as it relates to operating system and app updates. And it really revolves around, sometimes operating system updates are ahead of your application updates. And so, we see this time and time again. I'll pretend that Adobe Creative Cloud, is one of the major culprits that I use in that an operating system will have a new update, whether it's a security fix or a whole new version. And sometimes that, Creative Cloud isn't as quick to react and provide an update that works with that new version and breaks. How do we avoid some of that?
Okay, so there is a balance. You have to. There's a fine line between security when it becomes security and usability. And most of the time when there is an update like that, so the most recent Mac OS update, the major update, did change a lot of things for a lot of different developers. And there wasn't a major security fix in that major OS update. So a lot of people, rightly so, and safely, delayed updating to that new version of the operating system until their developers either found a different application to use, if they were still using a 32-bit application that was deprecated with the latest version, or they had to update their security certificates with Apple. So you have to keep in mind that you have to get your work done. And if an update is going to prevent you from getting your work done, it is, unless that vulnerability is with that specific piece of software itself, you're going to have to delay that update so you can do work, make money, keep your clients happy, keep your bosses happy. So it's not always like, you have to find a balance, and it's not always going to be an easy black and white question. But I do appreciate the question, and yeah, like you have to get your work done. So
yeah, that brings up a good point, and one that I actually forgot to use as an example is Zoom. Right, as everybody's been working more and more at home, Zoom had a number of issues kind of back in March that they had to really put some stronger security enforcements in place. And Michael knows this, as likely some others that are watching this, that when Zoom came out with a quick fix for the security side of things, one thing that they disabled was virtual camera support. And by disabling virtual camera support, that meant I couldn't use my DSLR or any type of camera that comes into Zoom as a virtual camera. And they just recently re-enabled that again, but that kind of prevented me from being able to say, okay, well, I can use this newer Zoom client. And sometimes, that's just what you have to do. Thankfully, I've got an extra camera that I can enable, and so I was able to get around that. So, all right, one more question while we're still kind of in this browser area before you go to another the next section. Bonnie is asking, what do you think of the Brave browser? Is it more secure than other browsers, or are they all about the same?
They're all about the same, but I do love the Brave browser, and I'm actually going to demo something with it later on in this webinar. So thank you for allowing me to foreshadow that. But it's not any more secure. It is based on so Chromium is the open source version of Chrome. And so now there's plenty of browsers that are based on that major underlying architecture. So Microsoft Edge just recently moved over to that. Brave is on that, Vivaldi, and countless others. And then there's Safari, which is actually what Chrome was originally based on, and they forked it to make Blink, and then Safari's WebKit. So they forked WebKit to make Blink the rendering engine. So they're all pretty much the same now, especially since Firefox is the only one who is kind of an outlier, still using their own rendering engine. And they're super secure. They have some cool security features in there. They have HTTPS DNS, which adds a little bit more security when you're browsing the web. That being said, a similar type feature like that is currently in a Chrome beta version. So there's going to be a lot of parity with security features, and I would say that they're all equally as safe. Adrian, would you?
Yeah, the one thing I was going to add was that the thing I think about with using the Brave browser is to prevent any type of tracking pixel that might be on a website, something like AdSense or AdWords or Facebook. If you don't want any of those types of tracking pixels to run, then most people will use Brave. And obviously there's extensions and stuff that you can install in Chrome and Safari that does the same similar things.
And we're actually, this is a great question because that foreshadows we're going to cover a little bit about how you can an extension that you can use for Chrome to kind of accomplish the same kind of task to add a little bit more security to your web browsing.
So Norbert has a follow-up question regarding Android phones specifically. So their example is Hangout wants to get updated over and over. They've turned off auto updates because they don't use Hangouts, Google Music, Google Play Music, etc. Is this not a good idea?
Yeah, I would suggest keeping auto updates on. If you can even set, depending on your phone, you should be able to set your updates to only happen at a certain time, or when you plug it in and you're connected to Wi-Fi. That way they're updating in the background and you won't even notice it. If you are lucky enough to be on a device that allows you to remove some of that software, I would just go ahead and remove any apps that you aren't using. That's also a security best practice, to limit the number of apps on your devices to the ones that you use, because just the more software that you have on your device, or the more plugins you have in WordPress, are just more possible vectors for attackers to find exploits and to getting access to your personal information, your personal stuff. So if you can remove them, I would remove them. Otherwise, I would make sure that you are allowing them to update, because with the change logs in both the iOS store and the marketplace, they're allowed to be super, super vague in there. And so, they'll sometimes just copy and paste the change log for the previous change log, and you won't know that there's a security fix on there. It might just have the generic, like, making everything better plus some bug fixes, here you go, generic change log that you see with a lot of the mobile applications.
Awesome. Looks like I have one more question. It's just related to the links that you've been showing us. Are the links that you've been bringing up, are those available in the handout?
Not all of them. Some of them are available in the handout. That being said, I will, if that is something everyone's interested in, I can create I have all these links saved in a different app, and I can make sure that I have those available for you guys tomorrow.
Yeah, cool. All right, I think that is it with the questions so far.
Okay, so
let you go on.
All right. So the next thing that I want to talk about is phishing. And then before we really jump into phishing, let's talk about a couple stats. So this one blew me away. 1.4 million phishing websites are created every single month. That's mind-blowing to me. 94% of malware is delivered via email through a phishing attack. Phishing attacks count for more than 80% of reported security incidents. $17,700 are lost every minute due to a phishing attack scam. So what exactly is a phishing attack? A phishing attack is when a cyber criminal will send you an email that either looks like a copycat of an existing email, and then they try to get you to do something, to hand over some personal information or to perform some kind of action that is going to compromise your site or have you download malware. So one example of this is your bank account says, hey, your account has been hacked, and the conner sends you a replica of your bank account that says you've been hacked and you need to update your account password. And so you click this link saying you have to update now in order to secure your account. And then that spam website that they created looks a lot like the website that is actually your bank website. And before you're allowed to update your new credentials, you have to enter in your existing username and password. And then once you enter in your existing username and password, guess what? Now they have your banking information, and they can take control of your account. Let me share something with you guys real quick. This is an example of Lou, who works for us. He's the lead developer as part of the leadership group at iThemes. He received this spam, this phishing attempt. They said, hey, someone requested access with your Google account, and then here's your verification code, log in. And then this is something that looks like it did come from Google, and but it didn't. It was a phishing attempt. And then right now, again, as I kind of open up with, right now we are seeing a huge increase in phishing attacks during the pandemic. We have I don't know about you guys, but I've received text messages about COVID. I've received emails about COVID. So they are taking advantage of this opportunity to, our guards are down a little bit. We want this information. It's important, especially early on in the COVID scare. We were clicking everything because we were so desperate for any information on what was going on and what we can do to protect ourselves that we saw a huge increase. Unfortunately, there's people who are not a part of our better angels who are like to take advantage of us. But these attacks, the phishing attacks, aren't just limited to emails. These also happen via text messages and phone calls. So two quick stories about the phone call one before we get back into the internet of things of it. I had a friend of mine who got a call from his bank and they said, hey, someone got control of your account. We need to ask you, what's your name? What's your number? We need you to verify that this is you. What's your social security number? What's your username? What's your password? What's your secret code? And he's giving it all over because he's trying to get this information so they can start the investigation in the process to get the money back into his account. Unbeknownst to him, he was actually giving this information to a criminal who was who then used that information to drain his account. So a lot of these are one of the methods they use is creating a sense of urgency. This is something you have to do now in order to take care of this problem. That way, you don't have any time to actually process this and then come to the conclusion, okay, wait a minute. This could possibly be a scam. Let me take some more time to investigate this. I had a friend of mine's mom who got a phone call from the IRS and said, hey, you have back owed taxes. And if you don't pay us now, we are sending the sheriff to your house to arrest you. And then, she's like, I don't understand. I always pay my taxes. Like, this doesn't make any sense. It's like, it's back due and it's time for you to pay up. Otherwise, we're sending someone to your house. So she paid up, and then she found out later that she didn't have any back owed taxes. This was someone just taking advantage of her, causing, creating the sense of fear. I found a really cool, and let's see what happens to that. This cool infographic that I found. Well, sorry, I have too many tabs open. And oh, here we go. Let me bring this over. So, so these scams, they like to play on your emotions. That's how they get you to stop thinking with your thinking logically and start reacting emotionally. So they'll create scenarios where they have an offer that's too good to be true, to play on your greed, like get rich quick, like take advantage of this now to double your income. Take advantage. We are naturally curious, so they'll try to structure a scam in a way that allows them to take advantage of your curiosity, get you to click on something, get you to go somewhere and enter in a bit of personal information. And then also they try to, like we talked about earlier, this is the one that they really like to use, is creating the sense of urgency. Hey, you get a random email from your boss from his mobile device. So it's, they know your boss's name. They know your name. They're using a non-work email that they then justify that they're doing it from their phone. And then they say, hey, I forgot to pay this vendor. I need you to pay this vendor. Here's their information. Pay them ASAP. We have to get them paid before X and X gets cut off. Next thing you know, you paid this hacker your employer's funds using your employer's financial information to wire them some money. Plenty of examples of that. We personally actually had one of our executives, someone was targeting Liquid Web employees, saying that email was actually coming from one of our executives. And I don't know about you, like AJ is my direct supervisor. If he sends me a message, I try to get back to him as quick as possible. He asks me to do something, I try to get onto that as quick as possible. But it's always important to take a pause. So what are some of the things that we can look for when we're looking at different things that we can look at to spot a phishing email? And then, so let me find, the first thing that you can do is look at the email, just who's sending the email. So typically, if there is a email coming from a business, it's not going to be a public domain. So if you get something from the IRS, you get something from Netflix, you're probably not going to have, they're probably not going to send it from an @Gmail account. There's probably going to be an @Netflix account, I live in Oklahoma. If I ever receive an email from, my utility company is .ok.gov. And so I'm trying to find right here. So, oh my gosh, this is scrolling weird. Okay, so the first key factor to look at is email. So if we look at this example, this one is from PayPal. And then so we have a service.e PayPal spelled kind of weird. That should be a red flag. There's a misspelling here. And it's @outlook.com. So again, if we are receiving an email from PayPal, we would expect that to be from @PayPal and not from @Outlet. Anyone can get an @Outlook account. So this is a huge red flag if you're receiving something from PayPal. But look how authentic this looks. This looks like something you would receive. That's the PayPal logo. That's the PayPal colors, structured in the HTML format of the emails that I receive from them. And if we look over here, here's another one. It's a unusual sign-in activity. Again, this is triggering sense of urgency, triggering your fear, triggering an emotional response. But we look up, well, why would the MS team have an Outlook account? Even though it's Microsoft, they're going to have a Microsoft account. So one of the first things, if you're suspicious about an email, is to look to see what is coming after an @. And then what you also see a lot of times, is a minor misspelling in that domain name. The domain name is the portion that comes after that @ symbol. So the example I put in the that handout is Netflix with an extra X at the end. Everything else could be at the same. It could be support@Netflix with the extra X.com, because those domains are available. These people can go and purchase the domains and then create email accounts for that. And then the next thing to look at when you are dealing with different, when you're trying to identify something as a phishing email, is to look for grammatical errors. So this doesn't mean every single word is going to be misspelled. It just means that they might be missing words that make the sentence a little bit more coherent. And this is going to be common mistakes that people who are learning English make. So, the example that I use is like, your account has been hacked. They mess up the tense of the sentence. And so that's just a good way to, it's a good red flag that you can use to stop and pause, take that extra second to verify that is the person that is the person they say they are. And so not every mistake is going to require extra attention. All of us make typos. And then also, like, if you deal with someone who English is their second language and you have regular correspondence with them, and that's the same kind of grammatical errors as they make during your regular correspondence, no red flag, it's going to be fine. And another thing to look out for is suspicious attachments and links. So again, these are going to be like on Windows. A lot of times it's going to be like a .exe, or it's going to be a .dmg on a Mac, .apk on Android. And so what will happen is, like, they'll try to send you out to these different locations, Okay, so if we look up here, we can see that they're trying to get you to sign into your Google account, but it's not actually going to google.com. If you take a look at the URL, you can look to verify it and then see that this is obviously not the correct URL for you to use to enter in your Google information. And then here's another example of, here's one that is trying to send you to Adobe to get your Adobe credentials. And again, double check and verify that URL. And here is another one that is about, hey, here is download this attachment. Here are the steps that you need to do to perform this task. And so they're giving you these steps to make you feel a little bit more comfortable, feels a little bit more professional, to get you to download the attachment and then follow the steps as they provide. It seems legitimate, but once you actually install it, you're actually infecting your device with malware. And again, another thing to watch out for is going to be urgent requests. If it sounds too good to be true, again, these guys are taking advantage of this current situation to try to get you to click on bad stuff. Now let's talk about a couple different ways that you can verify the email. So, or verify the identity of the person who, of the sender. So one of the things that you can do, if there is a number provided that they want you to call, what you can do is Google that, that company's name and see if that phone number matches what's in the email. If it doesn't, I would recommend calling the actual phone number in Google that you found in Google, and then see if that's an alternative phone number, if this is actually an employee, if they can help you verify that that email actually came from them. And then when it comes to links, it rings true for any link that you have. You can just hover over the mouse, and then you can see the URL at the bottom of the screen. I don't know if you guys can see that, but anytime I hover over this, that URL is the bottom left hand of the screen. Or if I hover on this one, again, bottom left hand of the screen. So is this link in the email actually taking me to where it says it's taking me? If it's not, don't click the link. You know it's spam. Go ahead and delete it. So those are just a couple of ways that you can look at an email, trying to identify, is this a con artist trying to scam me? Or is this a actual person who I should be communicating with? And again, there is also going to be, let me zoom back out of this, social media exploits. So again, same kind of thing. Like, are they trying to, is this the person they're saying they are? They're saying they're from, let's say you get a Facebook message from Liquid Web. Is it using Liquid Web, the Liquid Web's Facebook page? Or is it some guy at Gmail trying to just get you to get them that personal information that they can use to then drain your bank account, steal your identity? And that's what's so frustrating about these phishing attacks. Is I heard on this podcast I listened to called 2.5 Admins. They're 2 sysadmins and then a half of a system administrator. And they were talking about on there how they're talking about the increased number of phishing attacks. And then they said in there that 35% of phishing attacks are actually successful, which was, I've not been able to verify that number, but if that is true, that is such a huge number. Think about that with millions of phishing attacks happening all the time. That kind of success rate is very, very high. Now, so what else can we do to protect ourselves from phishing attacks? So in these 2 instances, let's say that we were to log in and then we were to enter in our correct username and password, now they have them. But guess what? We can do an extra layer of protection. Now, Google, they have said that if you add two-factor authentication to your Google account, it will protect you from 100% of phishing attacks, which I don't know about you, but I like those odds. 100% of the phishing attacks. So again, anything that you can add two-factor to is just another layer of protection that you can do to secure yourself, to protect you from all these different types of attacks. And then the great thing about the adding two-factor to your Google account, like you're not prompted for it very often. It's going to be anytime you're signing in a new device, if you've logged out of your current device. So again, that's just another layer of protection that you can add to protect yourself from the increased number of phishing attacks that we are seeing right now. Now, before we move on to the next section, do we have any questions?
Yeah, so let's see. Heather asked, can you see the source in the headers to know if it's a phish? I think she was going back to the Google email that you were referencing from Lou. But I think in any case, checking the headers, is there a way you can demonstrate checking those headers in emails?
Yep. All right. Oop. So there's we can do is you can just view page source, and then you can go in, and then here, yes, you can then look and see where the source of the email is coming from. Sorry, let me see if I move this out of the way, if I can see it. Okay, here we go. Content. I know it's in here somewhere, but do you see it, AJ? Am I missing it?
Well, that one is the HTML source of the page. You probably have to actually open up, if you scroll up into, since you're using Gmail, I think if you scroll up on that that email, there should be an option up kind of at the top. If you click show original, it should come up with this.
Yeah.
And then
Okay.
you
So this
can
is
kind of start
the
to
show.
see.
Yeah. And then, so this is the original message. You can see who it's to, who it's from, see that it was sent from updates@ithemes.com and MailChimp. But again, you can see that the sender from the actual message itself. But you still have to be vigilant to make sure that they haven't made like an iThemes, instead of having the S, maybe it's a 3. And then if it's a 3, it looks very, very similar to ours, but it's not actually ours, or there's just some kind of minor misspelling. What was that website that you found of iThemes that was they kind of spun us off, and then they kind of cloned us using, I don't remember the URL, but there was someone trying to make a duplicate site of ithemes.com. It was very, very similar. And so they could have used that domain name as an email address and then sent things under the guise of ithemes.com. And it would have been difficult to catch. I think it would maybe just been itheme.com.
Yeah, I think it was. I think what you were referencing, we had an affiliate that was trying to do something and make it look as much like us as possible. And that was something that became an issue.
So that's just an example of like you can get super, super close to the URL and then trick people into thinking you're something you're not. So it's still important to, take a pause, take a second and try to actually verify the source, especially if it's, again, requesting that you perform some kind of action. Take a second. Does this make sense? Why are they asking this? And then see if everything adds up. Is the language good? Can I verify that this is the actual email address? Which there are other tools that you can use. There's different things like this, like these email verifiers that they're not foolproof, but they at least give you an idea of it gives you at least a closer to understanding if this is a trusted email or not. That being said, there's other better ways to do it by like actually reaching out to, if you can verify the actual information on Google, then contact that company directly is a more accurate way to verify the information that they're requesting is actually needed. And keep in mind that like banks typically won't send you an email asking you to reply with your information or your user account information, your username and password in a normal email. They're not going to handle that way because that's not the most secure way for them to do that.
Yeah, so I think she was looking for an example of like, could we see an example of headers where it was a spoofed or a phishing attempt? I'm going to look for one. When you work at a larger company like Liquid Web, we tend to have internal phishing tests happen, and so I have one from the latest round of phishing attempts that I'm going to look for, and if I can find it, we'll come back to that one. But Heather, I think the point is if you can, if you're using the Gmail browser app like Michael's doing, if you click those three dots and click Show Original, you can see the data in there, and it becomes pretty apparent when you're looking at the headers that they're not who they say they are. But I'll try to find one for you and bring that back up later today.
Lou, I was hoping to get an actual phishing email, and Lou tried to forward that one to me, and our internal system was like, nope.
Yeah.
So
I think I have one that I kept in my inbox. It's just a matter of going through. It was sometime last week, I believe, that I got it. So I just got to go through a number of emails. So while I'm looking for that, Bonnie asked a question around the secure messaging app Signal. She just wanted to know what were your thoughts on it? Did you have any?
I think it's great. I think any encryption communication device is that method is preferable. That is honestly one of the, like here in America, we don't use, we use SMS. And that was honestly one of the reasons why I wanted to switch away from Android to iOS is that iMessage is as long as you are conversing with people who are also using iMessage, it has end-to-end encryption. So I can share sensitive information with my wife, for example, and not be worried that that's going to be intercepted. WhatsApp, the founder of WhatsApp, is actually also a big fan of Signal and gave them a bunch of money to invest to kind of support them. So, if you go to outside of America, SMS is less popular, and there is a ton of people who use either WhatsApp or Signal for secure messaging. So I think they're great. I think they're great.
All right. So Sue in North Carolina asks, at what point Do you recommend that a home or small business buy tools that can handle a lot of these tasks? It can quickly get overwhelming to do this all by yourself on top of work.
Um, definitely stick around, or please come tomorrow, because I'm going to show you some tools on how to secure WordPress. Because the thing is like there is a changing mindset in the realm of security. We have realized that we made some mistake along the ways. We've made things too complicated for the end user to secure their sites, and we made it so it's intimidating, and so it doesn't have to be. And so there are plenty of tools that you can use, and I'm going to cover later a couple free tools that you can use to help protect yourself locally. And then there's also some paid tools that you can use that I'm also going to kind of highlight. And anything you're not a security expert. And if you can find tools to help you secure not only your website, but your devices, do that. And then, spend your time doing what you actually care about doing. Spend your time making money, and then find tools that you can do to secure your site, because you're not a security expert. You probably don't have a ton of interest in being a security expert. That being said, I applaud the fact that you're here, because between today and tomorrow, you're going to get some actionable steps that you can take as a non-techie to secure your site with the use of some tools. So it's a great question. And I'm really glad that you asked, and I'm really glad that you're here, because at least the number one thing you can do, especially in your position, is just to make that little bit of an effort to prevent these attacks from being successful. I'm really excited that you're here. Thank you for coming, because I'm really passionate about helping the average person secure their site, secure and protect their business. I shared in our roundup this gentleman small business owner, his site got hacked, and he said it didn't feel like his website got hacked. It was a personal invasion of his space. And the amount of effort that it takes to go clean up that site, especially if you don't know what you're doing, is overwhelming. So no, you're exactly the person that should be here, because we're going to give you actual steps you can take to protect your business. That's not going to take you a lot of time. That's going to be easy for you to implement. So you should get some tools, and we'll show you some. And thank you for being here.
Alrighty, so Marianne asks, two-step authentication is a problem if you lose your phone out of country. How do you deal with that? Also, since replacing this phone, we get 1 to 5 texts or emails a day saying the phone was found.
So unfortunately, there's nothing you can do about it now. And a similar thing happened to me, and that's what got me to switch from Google Authenticator to Authy. I had a phone. It was a Nexus 5X or whatever it was called, and it just stopped. It boot looped on me. It just wouldn't turn on anymore. And so I lost all my authentication tokens that I had stored in Google Authenticator. And so now I use Authy, because there is a cloud backup that I can use Authy on any device, as long as I put in my Authy password, my secure Authy password, along with that's it. Just the backup code to decrypt those keys, and I can use it anywhere. So instead of being married to a single device, I can use it on my computer. I can use it on my laptop. I can use it on my cell phone. And so, and I use two-factor on all the things I can use two-factor on. And this is my Authy desktop app, and I have no concern showing you these tokens, because you don't have my strong password, and these are set to expire. And so I can secure my devices. I can take advantage of the security that two-factor gives me. But again, it doesn't have to be hard, and it doesn't have to be painful to reset it up if you lose your device. Unfortunately, if there's nothing I can do to help you now, but going forward, you can use Authy, which is a completely free to use, great two-factor app that doesn't marry your tokens to a single device.
Perfect. All right, well, that is all the questions I'm seeing right now. Bob did ask a question about when will WP vulnerabilities be addressed? And as I've kind of been mentioning in the chat, and hopefully it was apparent in the description above the video, today is really about setting the stage to securing your WordPress site, and hopefully understanding that there's more that goes into security than just securing your WordPress site. If you aren't running up-to-date software, if you aren't running up-to-date um, operating systems, if your browsers aren't up to date, those all can potentially lead to attackers gaining access to your systems that then accesses your website. So we're really kind of going through and saying, hey, before we go and secure our WordPress site, we need to make sure that our systems are secure and that we're doing the proper things there to make sure that they're secure. And given that virtually everybody these days is working from home, or prior to the pandemic and COVID-19, people were in and out of offices, and they were working at coffee shops, and they were working at other places. Making sure that your computer and the devices that you utilize to connect to your website are secure is just as important as securing your website. So we wanted to make sure that we're spending some of that time focusing on that.
And I'm going to share,
and obviously, yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to share a story in the next section of exactly what made me want to extend the WordPress security webinar beyond WordPress, because this next story is going to explain how this guy, his site kept being hacked and he couldn't figure out why. And then we figured out why. And then I'll tell you the rest of the story later, but it wasn't security related directly to WordPress, but his lack of security best practices led to his site being repeatedly hacked. So give you a quick, easy way to prevent that from happening.
All right, so we are just past the top of the hour. I want to, I think we've done a good enough job recapping. Let's take a 5-minute break. And while we're in that 5-minute break, if you want to get up, stretch your legs, use the restroom, grab a fresh beverage or a quick little snack, feel free to do that. Since this is a live training event, Michael and I really aren't going anywhere. We're sitting here right at our computers. So what I'm going to do is kind of during this 5 minutes, Heather, if you want to stick around, or if you want to just mark this as a point in time, I've got 2 emails that I've brought up that I'll show you kind of the headers and what speaks to me as these are questionable, potentially phishing attack emails. So that said, if you want to get up, take 5 minutes, feel free to do that. And we are at 9 minutes past the hour, and then once we kind of get there, we'll come back. So Michael, I'm gonna stop you from sharing your screen a second so I can share mine.
I'm gonna stick away and grab some water real quick, but I'll be right back.
Perfect. All right, so let's go to this email, because this one is the one I still have up. So this one, thankfully, we use a service, kind of an appliance, I guess you would call it, at Liquid Web that monitors all of our mail. And so in my email, occasionally I'll get this like little spam barracuda. This is just saying that appliance has marked this as potentially dangerous, and even itself, Gmail is also saying, hey, this potentially looks like it's dangerous. There's a lot of things that are going on here. And if you just start to take a look at just this email without even going into the headers for a second, you'll see some things that kind of stick out to me. So day is misspelled. It's DYA. that's probably the biggest one here. And when I say that is I'm looking at this little red section here that says hello A Morris. Well, this is my email address. I don't remember signing up for anything called thermometer no touch. So that's just something that I know right off the top of my head. And when I look at this email, this to me being in red signifies that this is probably an automated email, something that they set up through an email marketing solution of some sort, and that they're sending this out to massive lists, which is why like if you had also received this email, you would probably see day being spelled incorrectly. So far that doesn't show too much alarm, other than Gmail and Barracuda seeing it. I look here and I see if you want, and there's like this missing image, and there's some information down here. This section right here is kind of like starting in the middle of a sentence, and so this is some area of concern, which then would make me kind of prompt and look at the headers. So when I start to look at the headers, there's two things in email systems when you're setting up an email to be on a domain that you want to make sure passes, and that's the SPF. And this is, I forget exactly what it stands for, but it is something that you set up as part of your domain setup to send and receive email from a specific domain. And you'll notice that this one passes, but the DKIM fails. And if you want to learn more, you can kind of click on these, and this is basically saying, hey, this is to help prevent email spoofing. So right there, I say, okay, if this failed, then chances are this is a big a no-no, and I don't want to click on it. If you kind of look in through the rest of the headers, this is the actual headers of the email itself, and you'll see the one that I look for typically is this ARC authentication results, and you'll see that it's coming from Google initially, and the DKIM fails, and it's looking at a couple of header options here, and then the SPF passes. So I'm going to go out on a strong limb and say that this email is not something that we should be clicking on. It's something that we need to delete. And thankfully, in my situation, Barracuda has prevented it from coming into my inbox. It actually lives in my spam folder. Now I have one more that came in, and this one was a little interesting to me in that it's coming from QuickBooks, and I get QuickBooks emails all the time with vendors that we use here at Liquid Web, and so it's not uncommon for me to receive this. However, it's sending to somebody else, and my email wasn't even on there. So that's, again, this is just a light bulb for me. I see the SPF, but I don't see the DKIM setting. But I also see that the SPF is neutral, which means that there's a good chance that this could be either email spoofing or phishing. When I look through the headers, again, if I look for that ARC authentication results, I see the SPF, but I don't see the DKIM. And I see a lot of my email address in here as the one it's being sent to, but it's weird that they are using somebody else. I actually know this person in the company, but it's interesting to see that they're using that, but sending it to me. So, this one, you can even see like Barracuda comes in here and they're not worried about it. But I'm worried about it because the rest of the email is not from somebody that I do interact with on a regular basis. So I'm not going to look at it and assume that it's a spoof email. So those are two examples that I came up with really quick. Now, obviously, I kind of mentioned this in that, our own security team is testing us periodically. I don't remember if Michael mentioned it because I was focused on finding an email, but there was an email that was kind of going out from us recently that would be from your direct supervisor saying, hey, let's have a quarterly update. And in Gmail, it looked just like a calendar invite. And if you clicked on it, it ended up being a phishing information, and it would gain access, pretend access into your site. And so those were types of things that we wanted to make sure that that you don't do, and that's all relating to that phishing side of things. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to pop back over to our page. I think I saw a couple of questions. I know Bonnie and Heather were talking, so I just want to catch up there. So Bonnie said she was reading an article somewhere around last year that said a good way to look at security is to think attack surfaces. Consider each device that connects. I'm assuming that means connects to the internet or your website as an attack surface. I think that's a good analogy. I agree with that. Do you, Michael?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like everything that connects to your Wi-Fi is a potential point of entry. Every single plugin or theme that you have installed is extra code that can possibly be exploited. That's why we always recommend that you remove any unnecessary plugins that you aren't using. I trying to stay in a good habit of unplugging or disconnecting devices from my Wi-Fi that aren't currently being used regularly, because there's just no point of having if you're not using it, get rid of it, because it's another surface. So yeah, that's a great analogy.
Yeah, I think she goes on to say, just then take each attack surface, secure it the best you can. And that goes a long way to breaking this problem down into bite-sized pieces. So yeah, exactly what that's a good analogy, Bonnie. If you find that article, I would love to read the whole thing. So Heather is asking, I use an email client, and this helps me to know what to look for in headers. So perfect. I think we got her back looking through examples in headers. So all right, we are about 10 minutes in, so our break is over. Hopefully any of you that have kind of bounced, grabbed a drink, went to the restroom, checked on your kids or your spouse, or grabbed a snack, you're back with us. And what are we going to cover in this next just over 50 minutes?
We are going to cover a lot of cool stuff. This second part is going to be a lot more demos of me actually using tools to help secure sites, or not just sites, but also your network. The first thing we're going to start off with is going to be how to secure your internet traffic. Then we're going to talk a little bit about questions you can ask your hosts to make sure that they're have security in mind. And then we're going to cover a little bit about basic server security that you can actually handle.
All righty. So before I turn it back over to Michael, all that is good. I'm really excited to dig into this. If you have questions, just remember to preface your question with the word question, and make sure that you put it in all caps so that I can see that. And then I will grab that into a sheet, and at the appropriate time when Michael is kind of taking a break, I'll interject again and ask your questions. So Michael, I'm turning it back over to you.
All right. So when you are thinking about your home network, there's a couple things that you can do to easily just add some extra security to your while you're browsing the web. And then one of the things that you should always do is update your Wi-Fi password, just like we mentioned earlier with the your router is, it's easy for people to look at a website, the manufacturer website, find the default default username and password, and there's even a specific browser that you can use to find these devices that have these vulnerabilities. And that is the tool that the hacker used to find the vulnerability on that U.S. Air Force base, which is an interesting read. I did link to that in the handout. But so a couple different things that you can do is, one, you can update your Wi-Fi password. And usually you have to do this from your browser. I have a modem router combo that was provided to me by my internet provider. So one thing that we talked about was looking at the different devices that are connected to your Wi-Fi. And again, this is the address that I had to put in to access this, and then enter in my username and password to access this menu. It did come with a default. I did update that, so it's not just the default, default like admin password. And so first thing we can look at is on this page is the device itself, and I can see what devices are currently connected to my home Wi-Fi. And then gives me a great opportunity to see if there's anything on here that I don't recognize. And this could be a sign of one, you just forgot about the device. That's probably the most likely outcome. If you see something in this device list that is that's in this device list that you don't recognize, but it could also be a sign that especially if you're an apartment building or something else, there could be someone taking advantage of Wi-Fi or trying to collect information, collect that traffic that is going in and out of your modem. So in these modem settings, in these router settings, this is where you'll be able to adjust your firewall settings if you need to, and then also adjust your password, and then also see that device list to see if you need to take any action, kick them off. If you do see a device here that you don't recognize, you can also, in order to quickly get them off of your system, you can, there is an option just to disconnect every single device. Unfortunately, if they have your current Wi-Fi password saved, they're probably going to be able to reconnect. So you're going to want to go ahead and update your password again to make sure nothing else no one is taking advantage of your Wi-Fi network that isn't supposed to, even if it's not for malicious intent and they're just trying to, get free Wi-Fi. I still would want to kick them off because, Wi-Fi is a precious resource, and so, and a limited resource. So that is how you can take care of that. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about that story that I was talking about earlier. I had an iThemes customer come to support, and they asked for some help because they had iThemes Security Pro installed, but somehow their account kept getting hacked, and it was their user account that kept getting hacked. And so even though he was updating his password, they were still able to find his password, or still able to, every time he updated his password, they were still able to get their hands on the new password and then access their account. And then I did ask him if he had two-factor enabled. He said he had it enabled via email, because he was one of the last people left on earth that wasn't currently using a smartphone. So he couldn't get like the extra security of having a mobile device as your two-factor option as opposed to the email. Which also limited his options of securing his email address or his email account. And so, we kept finding all these different options. And finally, I found out that he was doing his work remotely from the library. Like many of us working from home right now, or people who have full-time remote positions, or have the power, since they're their own boss, they have the power to work from wherever they want to, whether it be a coffee shop, or, you're trying to get some work in on a plane or in the airport. What we need to understand is with these public Wi-Fi networks, they aren't secure. And so after I figured that out, I suggested that he try using a VPN in order to encrypt his connection and secure that connection. That way, when he went to update his email address or update his password, that if someone was scraping it using any tool, like there's plenty of tools that you can get that make it super, super easy to watch people's traffic on public Wi-Fi. They're not secure at all. Any person with very limited skills, no coding skills necessary, no coding skills required to monitor people's traffic on public Wi-Fi. So what I suggested to him was to try a VPN. And a VPN, or a virtual private network, is used to create secure connections over the internet. And then I recommend he use the one that I use, which I personally, I've used it for a while. I've used it on, I've used ExpressVPN. They're available on every single device. I've used it on Linux. I've used it on Mac. I've used it on Windows. I've used it on Android. I've used it on iOS. I even installed it on my Fire Stick. So let me give you an example of how a VPN helps and what it does. So right now, let's just I better not do that. Okay, so what it does is, like, when you're searching the internet, it's also going to connect you from one. It's going to connect you to one of their servers. So it gets filtered through, so it makes it hard for your internet service provider or someone looking for malicious data to actually track what you're doing, because their server playing a middleman isn't allowing people to see where you're actually visiting, where you're coming from. And so it just makes your browsing experience safer. And then I just want to kind of show you how easy it is to actually get going with it. So once you sign up, you just sign up. And then this is the little app that it comes with. And then to get started using it, all I have to do is press this. And it is going to turn it on for me. And then now all my traffic is going to be more secure. It's going to be encrypted. Not even my internet service provider is going to see what I'm visiting, what I'm doing. And then also, it's at the end connection, it also obfuscates what my actual IP is. And so again, just makes it a lot more secure. And so this guy who came to iThink security support, who kept getting hacked, he signed up for ExpressVPN, and guess what? He was never hacked again. His WordPress site wasn't hacked again, because someone else in that public library was hanging out there to just scrape people's devices for information, whether it be people's email passwords, which a lot of people use their email credentials to sign into other accounts, whether it be credit card information or what have you. There is a story of a reporter. He was actually writing about VPNs and public Wi-Fi, and like how sensitive information was. He was doing it on the plane's Wi-Fi without a VPN enabled. And then someone on that plane happened to be using one of those tools that you can install on your phone, your laptop, your tablet, that can monitor people's specific devices' internet traffic, and was able to read the article that he was writing on his laptop. And so as they were exiting the plane, he said, the guy approached him like, "Hey, I was able to see the story that you were writing. I just want to let you know that I'm actually using this tool, this device. I was able to see. I also think it's important. This guy wasn't a hacker. He was just more curious to see how this tool works." Now, ExpressVPN is my favorite VPN. It's also not the cheapest VPN in the world. There's other options out there. A lot, you may want to avoid some of the free ones. A lot of times they're just there to track you. They share that information with other people, and it really doesn't make you any more secure. They're just kind of funneling you through through their database so they can build a profile on you to share that information with other people. But there is a discount when you do go for a year. And then just so you know, this is hashtag not an ad. This is just an app that I use for a long time, and it's just a product that I use, like, and love. And then, as you can see, they have their apps available just about anywhere. Okay, so let's say that you work from home, you feel like you have a secure connection, and you can't justify spending the annual or monthly cost on a VPN when you only need to use it sometimes. So someone mentioned Brave earlier, and so we're going to go over to Brave, and what they have is a Tor private browser, which is a little bit more than just a regular private browser. So what this does, it private Windows with Tor. So what this does, it masks your ISP. It throws you through a bunch of different proxies, and it does a very similar thing that that your VPN would do. The only downfall of this, as compared to an actual VPN service like ExpressVPN, is that you can't choose which server you want to connect to. So, but this is going to help to obfuscate your IP address, and then also help mask your traffic so people can't snoop in on what you're doing and try to intercept any sensitive information you might be passing along. Another thing that you can use is this. Sorry. There we go. Is this Next DNS? You can try for free, and this is also going to be similar to the service that ExpressVPN does. It will also give you the option to block any kind of links that are associated with websites that are known bad actors when it comes to phishing attacks, or when it comes to spreading malware. So that has that database. So if you are about to go to a site, it'll just say, hey, nope, don't go there. This is also available just about everywhere. It's free. Then there's, you get like 300,000 DNS queries a month. So you can have your custom DNS, if you're familiar with like Cloudflare's solution, or Google's DNS, that you can have your traffic go through their DNS as opposed to your internet service provider. But they give you 300,000 queries limit a month. And then you can also add in like custom rules that you want to add on to. They have an option to install it directly on your modem. Pretty cool. So this is a cool thing that you can use to help secure your traffic online. And while we're on that subject, AJ mentioned earlier that there are extensions that you can get when using Chrome to have a lot of the same privacy features that Brave has built into it. I personally use uBlock, and what is good about uBlock is they not only do they block annoying ads, but one thing I like, they do make it easy for to turn off the ad blocker for sites that you want to be able to support their ad revenue model. And so you can turn it off, but then it's also going to block different trackers from once you leave their website, and installing the cookies that follow you everywhere you go. And then they also are going to protect you from crypto miners, and then any of the known malicious websites of spammers and phishers. So yeah, those are just some cool tools that you can use to really secure that connection, your internet traffic when you're working from home. I got kind of lazy at my house, really, because I really didn't do a lot of anything at my house that was sensitive information. I was used to going to the office where we have we're directly plugged into the Liquid Web VPN there, so all of our traffic is going through there, and what I like about Liquid Web is it's all for safety. Sometimes we'll make comments on iThemes, YouTube usage. They don't just tell us to stop, but they're proud of our efforts there. But again, it's just so we can securely connect into the Liquid Web servers or databases to get the information we need, but it also blocks other people from being able to access it. And so a VPN that way can also act as a form of two-factor. And then trying to speed this up a little bit. So there's a couple different things that you can do for your server security. And the first thing on that is going to be, choosing the right host. So, it's 2020, but unfortunately, there's still a lot of hosts that don't follow the best practices. There are still hosts that I see that are running PHP versions that have reached end of life. If once a software version has reached end of life, that means it's not getting any feature updates, but it's also not getting any security updates. And so that was the situation with the Equifax hack that we talked about earlier. There was an Apache vulnerability that they did not update, which is a part of the server software. And since they didn't update it, someone was still able to go in and then compromise their site. Unfortunately, we have a lot of shared hosting that doesn't take security as serious as they should. So some things that you should ask your host is, are you using the latest version of TLS to make sure that my connection is secure, the people connecting to my secure? Does your host enable logging? There's hosting that do not enable logging by default. Enabling logging is the first step that you need to do to have any kind of security monitoring on your site. If you aren't tracking for malicious behavior, you're not going to be able to stop malicious behavior. So I personally find that unacceptable, and you should be checking with your host to make sure that they are. And then, part of that is the using HTTPS and SSL on your site. Now, most hosts like iThemes Hosting, we take care of your DNS, your HTTPS, and your SSL for you. One thing to keep in mind with the SSL certificates is that, unless you set it to, they won't auto renew. And then once it expires, you'll no longer have any benefits from it. Oops, that's not what I want. I wanted, here it is. Okay, so once your SSL certificate expires, you're going to have to renew that certificate in order to get the protection that it provides. And so what does an SSL cert and HTTPS do for you? What that does, it allows your customer to connect, or your client or me connect to a site. And then that communication that we have between my browser and that site allows that communication to be secure and encrypted. For example, if I'm entering in my username and password, or I'm entering in some sensitive information like credit card data, that's going to allow me to do it in a secure way. So think about when you're, ordering from Amazon and it's getting delivered to you, and think about that as like the equivalent of the information of the package of information between your browser and a website. They send that package in a sealed box that you can't see what's inside of it. If you're using HTTP as opposed to HTTPS, so you're not using an SSL certificate, it'd be like if Amazon was sending that package to you, but in an open box that everyone could see what's inside of it. So that really is crucial to have HTTPS on your site. Now, if you're not using a host like iThemes Hosting that's automatically registers the SSL cert for you, automatically configures it for you, and automatically renews it for you, this is a great thing that you can use right here is CertBot, which this is an automation tool that allows you to set up, configure, and have it automatically renew and let's encrypt SSL certificate. So if your host is leaving you out on the ocean on your own to handle this yourself, this CertBot tool makes it a lot easier for you to manage that. And again, we're now in 2020. Google and every other browser and search engine is now punishing sites for not having SSL in place, because it is the bare minimum that you can do to help protect people visiting your site when they're entering information. But yeah, the CertBot is a really, really good tool. And another thing that is changing with SSL certificates and their expiration dates, you can purchase for it's surprising to me how expensive like these long-term SSL certificates are, that you can have like multi-year SSL certificates that that makes it so you don't have to renew every 30 days or whatever it is with like a free Let's Encrypt certificate. But Safari is starting in September 2020. So September of this year, they're no longer going to support SSL certificates that are over a year old, that last for longer than a year. I think it might be something like 389 days, not like 365 days. But those are no longer going to be supported by Safari. So just keep that in mind, that you're probably going to have to, if you're used to getting those long-term SSL certificates, you're probably going to have to change your plans going forward. Okay, so another thing that you can do from for your basic server security setup is using a web application firewall or a CDN. So a web application firewall acts as like a go-between between the people visiting your site and your site. So any request made to your site is first going to go to that web application firewall. Now, keep in mind that we recommend that you don't use a PHP firewall, something that is actually going to run the site. And this is for a couple of reasons. One, PHP has limited resources, and there is a lot of server setups that have mod PHP misconfigured. So anytime you do a PHP request, it limits it. You can quickly run out of PHP workers. And so every single request that hits your page is going to require more PHP workers than actually necessary. And it can really end up slowing down your site. I saw a great article of a comparison between like a local PHP firewall versus a Cloudflare firewall, and the amount of slowdown of this PHP firewall was significant of the local PHP firewall. It was a DigitalOcean instance, which had a bare minimum basic WordPress install on it, and it still managed to slow it down quite a bit. But there is good news. Cloudflare, they offer a free package for basic CDN purposes. So a CDN is going to be it is a content delivery network, and that is also going to help manage the traffic that's coming to your site. And a CDN is a great way to protect against DDoS attack mitigation. And a DDoS, denial of service attack, is when a network of bots send a bunch of requests automatically to the site to trying to overwhelm it, causing it to crash. And now, if you are, especially if you are on a poor host that drastically limited resources, it's not going to take much to bring your site down. Fortunately, if you use a service like Cloudflare, which you can get the basic package for free, you can get DDoS mitigation protection. And what this will do is they'll recognize that this influx of traffic is coming from a bot network, and they're going to be able to stop that traffic before it ever actually hits your site, causing you any resources. So that is the best mitigation that you can do for a DDoS attack. Really, the only other reasonable way to actually fight or protect yourself against a DDoS attack is by purchasing a much larger hosting package than you actually need. So when you do get that influx of traffic, you can mitigate that just by having the extra resources available to take on that load. Now, I kind of rushed through all that part because I wanted to make sure that we had time to take questions here at the end. And so please let me know if you have any questions, or if you need me to go back over something.
All right. Well, that is tons of information. I think we have a couple of questions in here. And I'll just go right into it. So Bonnie is asking, I use ExpressVPN also. How does it quote rate or compare to Norton 360? Is it similar to browsers in that these top players are all about the same?
Um, I'm not familiar enough with Norton 360's VPN to speak on that. That being said, VPNs are not all created equal. There is a ton of VPN extensions and that are based out of China that literally are just collecting your information and they're not actually doing anything to protect you. Um, and then beyond that, like I have tested some other VPNs that when it came to reliability of internet speed, they failed to compare with ExpressVPN. And that's one of the reasons why I've always been willing to pay a little bit more for ExpressVPN than using other services. Um, yeah. And then you also have to keep in mind, depending on what you're doing and what you're using your VPN for, some of them are going to log that data and then have that data um, um, be traceable to you. So there's some so if you don't want anyone to know what you've been doing on the internet, using a VPN that doesn't have logs is the way to go. And there's also like, if you are looking for a project to do and you have like an extra Raspberry Pi laying around the house, there's a cool, you can do a Pi hole, which is a cool like VPN / honeypot thing that you can do to protect your network. And there's, this is a rabbit hole you can go down.
Yeah, yeah. I think someone else had summed it up best. There's a ton of things you can do security wise to help keep yourself secure. When does it become when does it become smarter to just hire it all done instead of trying to do it yourself? So
Yeah.
I definitely kind of agree with that. So it looks like Bonnie also asked another question. How would you advise that in general, when it comes to security apps and plugins, when it really matters, do you pay for the extra service? So.
If yeah, I pay for the extra service. Like when it comes to, there's a reason why I pay for a VPN. There's a reason why I have other security measures in place for various things that I pay for because I value security. And there's lots of things that I don't want to do myself. I know how to do them, but like it's still time consuming. And if I can find a tool to automate it for me, that's the route that I'm going to take.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I know myself, especially if the way I kind of look at do I pay for a service or do I use a free service is for my own sanity. When I look at it from a business perspective, it's if I'm making money on something, I'm going to pay for a service. So you'll see like my own Cloudflare account. I have a number of website properties that I make some revenue on, some more than others. And in that situation, those are on a paid version of Cloudflare where some of my side projects that are just small blogs or other things, I don't pay for the paid version of those. All right, so I just want to take, before I answer or ask the last question, I think we're wrapped up. Before we kind of wrap everything and put a nice bow on it, if you do have questions that you want to get answered, anything about software updates, phishing, spoofing type attacks, tools to protect your network at home, your devices, anything like that. Now is the time to ask those questions. We're a little bit delayed from when we see the question to when we get to answering it. So I want to make sure that you have ample opportunity to ask those questions, excuse me. So make sure you're dropping those in. I see a couple already coming in now. So with that, we'll go to Deb. She is asking, is the VPN you get with Dashlane Premium secure?
I honestly am not familiar with that service, so unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to speak on that.
Okay, there we go. So Gail is asking, I use AVG security for my laptop. Do you have any experience with their VPN service?
I have not used AVG in years, and so last time I used it, they didn't have a VPN service. Yeah, there's a ton of them, and yeah, there's a lot more now than there used to be, and I unfortunately have tried a very small pool of them.
Yeah, I think even for myself, my experience with whether it's a antivirus or some sort of a security product, malware detection or something like that. My experience, I've been a long time Mac user. I've been using Mac for, gosh, probably 15 years or more. And there was the old adage that if you used a Mac, you didn't need to have antivirus software. And I really kind of lived that until 2018. And then after that, I started using it. And obviously, working for a much larger company, we have antivirus and all sorts of protection software on our computers to make sure that we're running well. I think there will be a time in which we see some sort of a similar service available for iOS and iPad OS devices as well. But I think we're still in the infancy stage there to really warrant something there other than a VPN.
These operating systems now have really good built-in antivirus device software. Like Windows Defender is really, really good now. Like it's not as much of a resource hog as it used to be, and it blocks more attacks than the third-party antivirus software. They have an advantage because it's built into the operating system, so is able to access more of the different parts of the operating system. So for the most part, the built-in antivirus software works really, really well. The most important thing is to watch out for phishing, spoofing, and not installing software from untrusted devices.
Yeah. So let's wrap it up here. So we started, at the top of the webinar, we started talking about, our operating system, our apps, keeping those updated, running automatic software updates, or at least, I don't think you mentioned it, but something that I know I've had to do in the past is at least put something on my calendar once a month to just check for updates. So something like that, just so that you're always making sure that your software is up to date. Looking at your router, especially at the home. You mentioned a lot of things with the router, from keeping its software up to date to making sure which devices are connected. You could even be implementing something that is changing that password, every 60 or 90 days. Something like that to just help further along that security piece. Looking at your browser, obviously making sure that that's updated, running with, especially if you're using something like Chrome that allows extensions, making sure those extensions are up to date. Chrome does a really good job of that, so that's really great. And then again, looking at your Internet of Things devices, the cameras, the doorbells, the security systems, making sure that they're all secure, password protected, their software is up to date. So I think we've got a lot of good information to take from this. Do you want to give us any kind of tidbits or insight into what we're going to catch tomorrow as we join in for day 2 of getting started with WordPress security.
Tomorrow's mostly television. It's really, we're going to be covering how to secure your WordPress login, how to use your security logs, how to monitor your site's health, plugin and theme management. We're going to debunk some security myths and even talk about recovery. And it will be, we are publicly announcing a new feature in iTheme Security Pro tomorrow that has been a long effort by us. That is going to be the first time that we're showing it anywhere. Is going to be in tomorrow's webinar. That's super, super cool way for you to protect your site. And that's about as much as I'm going to tease that for now. But we're going to have a live demo of that tomorrow, which I'm so pumped to finally get to show this off and share this with everyone. I think the team internally knows how giddy I am about this release. So get ready.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining. I know there's been a lot of questions about is a replay going to be available? It is. You should be able to just refresh this page. So save it, bookmark it, and you can come back to it for a period of time, and you'll be able to watch it as we are using the YouTube live streaming ability. Post today or even tonight. If you go over to our YouTube channel, I've definitely included the link in the chat, but I will include it again. I think I still have it there. Yep. So if you go over there, it should be available within I don't know, it's 15, 20 minutes. I think it just kind of has to like save the entire recording, reprocess it, and then it should be available for replay. So you can also check it over there on the YouTube channel. So thanks for joining. Hope you'll join us back here tomorrow, same time, 1 p.m. Central, as we dive deep into the world of WordPress security. So thank you, and we will see you tomorrow.